Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin with the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
Doing great. How about you, Eric?
Doing fantastic. It is an
I believe it's our last August presentation here.
Yeah, we're ending up August, and it is unseasonably cool, which I find fantastic. Weather up in New England is absolutely amazing for this time of year. So hopefully you're getting a chance to enjoy it.
Yeah, kind of reminds me of my old vacations that we used to take in the Adirondacks back in the 90s, and they were always at the end of August, and this is the kind of weather we get every day. Of course, I don't have a hot top on my deck like I did at the house I was staying with there.
Well, we can't have everything, you know. But for those of you out there that do have cool weather and hot tubs, go enjoy it, you know.
Invite us over.
Right.
Live podcast.
So today we're going to talk about the process of making better decisions. You know, we all make decisions every day. And, you know, sometimes we're not making the best decisions. So how can you improve the process so that you're making better decisions and getting more out of it?
Yeah, there's obviously this is a very, very wide open subject, but a lot of it goes back to personal development, finding your purpose and why, and things like that. But there's obviously different things that you can look into. And I read one article that talked about activating the 4 pillars of wealth. Basically, when you're looking to do that, there's motivation. And obviously, that's when you become what motivates you. You can consciously choose what you got to do. Second one is decision making, which we're talking about today. And then we have creativity and awareness. So when we're talking about the second pillar, which is decision making, there's a few things that I have here, but one of the things that I'm going to start out with is basically sticking to your own guns and don't ask other people what you should do. Because if you do, they're going to tell you. And if you ask 10 people, you're going to get 10 different opinions.
That's very true. I mean, everybody has an opinion, and they're not all going to agree. And they're not all coming from the place where you are. So having someone else say, well, this is what you should do, without knowing where you are, and more importantly, what you're trying to accomplish, the information they'll give you really isn't that good. I mean, the first step in making a good decision is knowing why you're making the decision in the first place. What is it that you are deciding on, and why are you doing it? I mean, if it's something simple like, what are you going to have for dinner? You know, the answer doesn't necessarily have to be so great. Because quite frankly, you're going to have another dinner tomorrow night, you know, so you can get the chance to do it over. When you're making a big decision, knowing what it is you're trying to accomplish and what you need that decision to get you to is very important. Because without knowing your why, and we've talked about that a lot before, the decision can change.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if you're asking other people, that's not going to help you out. However, it is important for you to consult with the people who your decision is going to directly affect. So anyway, getting to the keys of making a good decision, if it's something that has to do with finances or jobs or a lot of other different things, projects, uh, identifying the identify the decision to be made as well as the objectives or the outcome that you want to achieve. If you identify and really, really define exactly what you're making the decision on, that's step number one. Obviously, you have to do a lot of homework, fact gathering, brainstorming, and that kind of thing. What are the possibilities? What are the probabilities of the outcomes, different outcomes that you can achieve from making the decision? Listing the pros and cons. And obviously, once you make that decision, just make it and monitor your results. But it does take a lot of planning, and homework is a huge part of it, just like it is in a lot of different things that we talked about.
Yes, and it's very important, when you're doing that homework, you need to be able to get out of your own way. Most of us tend to make knee-jerk reaction decisions. These are emotional decisions. It feels right. Well, what feels right might not be right. It might not be feasible. It might completely be the wrong decision. Getting past your own emotions and sitting down to do the research and do the homework you need to do is crucial to making a good decision. And realistically, you should be doing this for just about everything. I mean, I know people who, before they buy a television set, they will sit down at the internet and they will research all sorts of different models and different technologies, and they'll make sure they get the best TV set for their money. But when
Yeah,
it comes to making a decision about your health, seat of the pants, don't even bother doing any research. You really do need to do this research and do the homework before making important decisions. And as I've just illustrated, the first step in this is identifying what an important decision is.
yeah, absolutely. One of the things out there, obviously, research is great, but sometimes you get too much in the research and it's overkill. And the bottom line is, uh, one article said, for starters, you might think you'd be better off if you just had more information about the choices at hand. In a lot of cases, you don't need that information. You'd be wrong. The bottom line is that the TMI, too much information, is getting tougher and tougher now more than ever. And again, it gets back to the core things. It's, what are you feeling on the inside? What are your gut feelings about things? What are your strengths? And the other thing is one of the things that too much research will do is make you procrastinate until you don't make a decision at all. So the bottom line is, get enough information, make a good enough decision, then just go do it. As we talked about it, monitor the results, and you can always adjust.
Yeah, we've talked about the problem with too much information before. We refer to it as analysis paralysis. You're spending so much time doing research that you're not actually making the decision or taking action. And you do have to be careful about that. The other thing to remember is that you probably have more information than you realize. And I'm going to refer back to, we've mentioned this in the past, the book Blink by Malcolm Gladwell. And that entire book is about how, in a split second, you're actually taking in a lot more information than you realize. And a lot of it goes to your subconscious, but you have access to all of it. So you don't necessarily have to jump in and do tons of research, maybe just enough to remind you about what you already know.
Yeah, the bottom line is, you don't need more information, but what you do want to do is hone in on exactly what you're trying to accomplish so that you can get the right information without going all over the place. You got to focus on exactly what you're trying to accomplish.
Right. And once you've got that down, the decisions should be much easier. Because again, you know, to take a quote from Yogi Berra, if you don't know where you're going, you might not get there. You need to know where you're trying to get to before you make the decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a lot of cases, some people say don't fly by the seat of your pants, but feelings are not the enemy in all cases. The bottom line is, it says for simple choices, definitely use your raw brain power. For complex choices, you really got to trust that intuition, because it's something you're going to be living with really, really solidly afterwards. So you have to take that into consideration.
Yes, any complex decision especially something that's going to affect the long term. When you go with your gut, again, I refer back to Malcolm Gladwell's Blink. What your gut is processing is all of the stimulus that you've taken in. So all of the information that you've heard, seen, you might not be consciously thinking about it, but following your gut, you're going through all of that.
Yeah, that was actually the next point that I was going to be talking about, is trusting your gut. And the bottom line, it says, if you're not sure if you're an expert, that's what you should trust as your gut. And one of the things that it recommends that you should do is actually keeping a decision diary in how you made your decision. And it will probably prove out that trusting your gut is a very, very good way to go, just by keeping a decision diary and how you made those decisions.
Yeah, that's an excellent piece of advice. When you know that you've made good decisions in the past, and if you're keeping this diary, you can look back and go, oh, yes, this was good, this was good. You can actually see the processes that you used to make the good decisions as opposed to the bad decisions, and follow through with that.
One point that I really love too, that can guide you in this, it says, if you forget everything else above that we just talked about, what one thing should you remember? Just ask yourself, what advice would I give to someone else in this same situation? In other words, the outside perspective, taking all of your thoughts and feelings out of it. That sounds like a pretty good process to go through too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, how many of us, when our friends are telling us about a problem, you tend to go, oh, well, do X, Y, Z. But if you're going through that same problem, oh, you can't figure it out, it's incomprehensible, it's because you're too close to the decision. Backing away from it and taking an impassionate look at it is a fantastic way to make the decision easier on you. We
Yeah.
all tend to look at these things like, oh my God, it's so difficult, because we're looking at it as, I'm going to have to live with this for the rest of my life, or, the next 6 months, or however long this decision is going to affect you. And you start thinking about all of the ramifications of that. And that sort of takes you away from making the decision itself. So being able to take that step back is very important.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about changing the word but to and going through that exercise. Most of the time when you're thinking about making a decision, you're getting closer, all the buts come up and you think of the reasons why not. It's just human nature. But if you step outside and you're the person that's actually helping the other person, you're getting more, you're going to take the positive role. It's almost like role playing with yourself, and you're turning all the buts into ands as far as why you should be doing it and what the positives are that can happen from that. So it's a really fantastic exercise to do. And obviously, if you're not going through that, anytime you are coming down with the buts, make sure you have a column for ands when you're doing your homework as far as what the positives are for making that decision.
Yes, you always need to focus on the positives as well as the negatives. You're not just looking at drawbacks, you're looking at opportunities. So whenever you make a decision, particularly important ones, you're essentially saying, well, what opportunities do I have coming from this decision? And what are the drawbacks? And you do need to take a look at both of them. One of the things I came across, when researching this week, is that one of the things that keeps us from making a good decision when you're looking at those pluses and minuses is overconfidence. You may see all of these fantastic opportunities if you make this decision, and you have the confidence that, oh yes, of course I can do these things. But if you're overconfident and you can't actually accomplish these things, that has a major impact